I just learned too much about myself. Actually, it's stuff I'm like, oh yeah, no, it's just reinforcing. I'm like, ah, yeah, that makes sense in like 20 things that I've done this morning and different ways that I've behaved already today. So,
I
um,
will admit there's I think like when I first moved to Boulder and we first connected, I was like, I think you might benefit from some of my research.
I always benefit from some of
Yeah.
your, I always benefit from all of your research. It's really funny
Oh,
because
well, thank
whenever I get on the phone with you, I'm like, I basically look at my clock and I'm like, okay, how much time do I have? Because I'm just gonna learn. It's basically like going to
you.
class. You know, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna shut up, put myself on mute so I can like do the dishes and listen to like a
Yeah,
whole
yeah,
bunch of,
yeah.
yeah, but in a good way, in a really beautiful way. So,
Thank you. I think you're not alone in that. How much time do I have? And like, oh, okay, I see how this interaction is going. This is.
no, no, it's really beautiful. It's really
Thank
beautiful.
you. Thank
So,
you. Let me really quick pull up. I pulled together just a little bit of notes. I'm going to give just a really brief kind of introduction for folks who don't know you, and then I might ask you to elaborate a little bit.
yeah, and while you do that, I'm gonna encourage everybody right now. I mean, it's a small group this morning, which I love. It's Sunday morning coffee. If you wanna ask questions like as we're going, please feel free. And if you want to turn on your video so I can see you, that's also great. But I also know it's early on Sunday morning, and you're all probably wearing hoodies or maybe nothing, so that's fine too. Um, Hi, Heather did it. Hi, Heather. Great.
Heather! Oh, Heather's our champion. Katie Bray.
Okay, Katie
Bray's our
did it. I love it. See,
champion.
people are being bold. I like it. She's even eat.
Amazing.
Katie's eating, which makes that's
Yes.
great. It's like bring the whole human. We're into it.
Amen. Amen.
Eating
Um,
and driving, which is great. I support
yeah.
that.
Although I believe, oh, we are no longer on a family insurance plan, but I will say, Katie, we don't have a great history for driving. Please be safe. Um, Excellent. Okay. I'm gonna do maybe one more quick screen share if I can just figure out how to do this. Yeah, okay. I'm gonna just kind of cheat for a minute here. And okay, we've got some more folks coming on. So Corey, I'm just gonna read like the little write-up that I kind of wrote just to give
Sure.
folks the intro. Um, so for those of you who don't know Corey, I'm just going to jump right in. He's a world-class photojournalist, athlete, author, and artist. He's one of three humans to summit one of the world's 8,000-meter peaks, Gasherbom 3, and has informed people like me that that's a thing. I've learned a lot of geography because of you. Very grateful. In the winter, he's one of three folks alive to have summited this in the winter. He summited Mount Everest without supplemental oxygen. He's photographed 12 feature assignments for National Geographic. He's appeared on the cover of the 125th anniversary issue. He's earned Nat Geo Adventurer of the Year. He's featured in award-winning documentary Cold, which is a short that came out in 2011, directed by Anson Fogel. And he released his first book, The Color of Everything, A Journey to Quiet the Chaos Within, not this past summer, but the one before, which received significant praise and was selected as an editor's pick in the best biographies and memoirs category of Amazon. I had to skip so many other accolades. Um, Corey, you now have a second photography book is called Bipolar, if I remember correctly, that kind
Yep.
of accompanies that. Um, and oh man, I kind of had fun with this. So I'll just keep going. Um, Atop the world's highest peak, Corey found that he still could not escape himself. So Corey was also diagnosed with bipolar disorder at the age of 6. I feel really impersonal reading this.
Well,
Um,
no, no, it was but that one that was 14. I was first.
14.
I was yeah. I was well. We can dig into that. We can.
Perfect.
Yeah, yeah. So.
So we'll just say this. Corey has been on a journey of mental health, including in an allopathic healthcare system from a young age. His journey involves, I would say, deep acceptance. And I'm kind of layering over my own word, but to borrow from Buddhism, Maitri or loving friendliness with, I think, yourself is what I really see, regardless of the internal and external conditions. And I perhaps will stop there. Um, I will just add, Corey. I've known you for a little bit of time, and you are, to me, one of the most unique and brilliant human beings that I know. Just gonna right off the bat. I remember when I was little, and my dad told me a story about Chris McCandless. I think that his story had maybe just been published. This was before Into the Wild came out, but my dad knew of the
Yeah.
story of Chris McCandless, and I remember I was young, and my dad told me he he burned money because his money had more value to him as fire than as a dollar bill. And for
Hmm.
me as a young kid, that blew my mind. And just, I was immediately, really taken aback by the lifestyle that this human being chose to live for himself. And I
Hmm.
think I've told you this before, but you were the first person who I met in my life who was a real person with skin on their body who was doing that for themselves. That's how you showed up to me. You were choosing to live your life in your own way. And so I
Thank
would
you.
just open maybe with that. And I thought I would open with I just read a whole bunch of accolades, and I'll stop the screen share here. I just read a whole bunch of accolades, and I could go on and share what the media finds value in of the things that you do and what I find value in of the things that you do. But I thought I'd start out by asking you, what
Mm.
do you find value in of who you are and what you do?
Wow. So we'll start it off super,
Yeah,
surface
yeah. No,
level.
we just jumped right
Um,
in.
yeah, no, I love that. Well, thanks for all the kind things that you said. That's really, I appreciate it. Always makes me feel a little, um,
Yeah.
yeah, sheepish. I'm like, oh, but I mean, there's the value in the things that I do, and I'm very proud of some of those things. And as I've grown into it a little bit, I'm actually capable now of actually stating a certain amount of pride in those things. For a long time, I couldn't do that. But I think where I find the most value now is in cultivating the person that I am versus like how I want to show up in the world, because the external stuff is very flashy and fun and it gets me into interesting rooms and I get to sit and have lovely conversations like this, but the doing, so it's valuable, right? But it's also I think what I've really shifted my focus to over the last 4 years, and certainly while I was writing the books, was trying to understand that my value, and where my inherent pride is best untethered from the external actions that I'm doing. So, like I really am. I'm very, very, very proud of just being kind of the person, showing up for my friends, um, being in community, in meaningful community with people that um, are that have a shared set of values, things like that. And that's been the most generative for the past, for the past 4 years of my life. I don't know if that answers that, but just yeah,
Yeah, thank you. Maybe I'll take a step back. I gave a little bit of an overview of your accomplishments, but
yeah,
not really your life. Um,
right,
and your book kind of does that. So I think I'm gonna just like throw the ball over in your court.
yeah.
And also, again, of this same tune, I could give my perspective of your book, but I'd rather hear your perspective of your book. And that could be two different things, maybe a, description for folks who haven't read it and aren't familiar, and then if there's anything you want to add of your perceptions of it.
Yeah, so the book is really, I mean, I will say this. I think when I in I think it was 2021, I went to a mountain called Dhaulagiri, and I was on the tail end of my professional athletic career, and I had left National Geographic by this point, and I went to the seventh highest mountain in the world trying to do a new route. And it's, these things come with all sorts of stimulus, all sorts of tremendous stressors. And I had what, clinically we'd call a mixed bipolar episode at base camp where, and I was diagnosed bipolar too. And we can get into my relationship with diagnoses later on. But my brain essentially was functioning in I would call it a hypomanic state that was overlaid with the cataclysmic depression. And that resulted in me leaving the expedition and coming back and really taking full stock in my life, and I started writing the book in the wake of that, in the wake of the decision to walk away completely from athletics and completely from photography. And so that there was this sort of decoupling of, well, if I'm not doing those things, then who am I? And there was a profound search in me that was expressed through the writing and the mining of my own story. So I backed it all the way up to the beginning and said, shit, mom took me to see a psychologist at 1. What does that mean? Like, what did she see? What was she seeing, and how has that played forward? And also, how has that informed the stories that I'm telling about myself and the world around me? And so, in a very real way, the book was somewhat self-indulgent at its beginning, which I think so often memoirists like resonate with. At the end, it became sort of more of an offering, which is the hope that through my story, I hope other people can feel seen in their own. But really, what it talks about in very brief is, I was always very mercurial as a child. I was very unpredictable. I was hyper artistic, and deeply emotional. And I was a gifted student. I went to school, high school, 2 years early. And about a year and a half into that experiment, uh, my grades started to fall. There was violence at home between my brother and I. He's a couple of years older than I was. Um, and then I was diagnosed with clinical depression and anxiety, and I was medicated. And then when I was 13, I was institutionalized and put in a hospital, primary children's psychiatric unit in Utah. And on the heels of that, I was put in a long-term care facility for 8 months called Lifeline, and it was sort of a inpatient outpatient hybrid based on the 12 steps. This is mid 90s in Utah, banner years for bipolar diagnoses. And it was there that I was diagnosed with bipolar 2. I ran away from that facility 3 times, and on the last time my parents sort of threw their hands up and were like, okay, well, fair enough, but you can't live here. I I don't begrudge them for that at all. I think it was the only decision they had left at the time. But I do remember sitting across from the house at night and watching the locks get changed, and just realizing, where do I go from here, sort of. So now I'm 15, high school dropout, homeless, having been through the sort of the standard medical or care
Yeah.
structure. And it was about 2.5 years of this wandering, very much, usually I was not on the street. There were times that I was, but um, it was the end of that when I was 17, 18 years old. I ended up living with my aunt and uncle in Seattle, and it was there that I rediscovered climbing, which was something that I had started when I was very young. And and it was in that same moment that I sort of picked up a camera and channeled all of that angst, that energy, that discomfort, and certainly what was still very present in me and still is, that bipolar mind, as we might want to call it, into photography and climbing. And that set off a career path that, in many ways, was solidified in that, on that Gasherbrum 2 expedition and the avalanche that we experienced there. Um, and it was, that set me on the trajectory on National Geographic and launched my career. And it was also sort of this cataclysmic or catalyzing moment where the totality of my childhood, and when we talk about adverse childhood experiences and things like that, was really set into motion through acute PTSD. Um, and so the book really is about that, and it's about the entire trajectory of my life leading up to Dalagiri, where bipolar, this thing that I've been trying to basically outrun in my life, comes back and in many ways settles me. So it's yeah. Did I answer any of your question, or did I just
Yeah,
fucking
no,
talk for 5 minutes? I
you
don't
no,
even. I
it's
blacked
great.
out.
It's great. Boy, there's so much that I've got like 50 notes. I will just offer an invitation too, if anyone does have any questions that they, feel free to chirp in. Um, so here's one. This is gonna seem unrelated, but I'm gonna like go for the jugular first. One thing, yeah, or the heart. We'll just say I'll go for the heart first. One thing that you shared was over the past 4 years, you've been on a journey to find yourself. And I
Mhm.
wonder, what do you find?
Well, what I found is really that go for the jugular, go for the heart, and I'll take it to the mind and then I'll take it back down. What I
Mhm.
found is that I'll speak only for myself, am a collection of stories. That's really it. My consciousness is a collection of stories, things that I've learned about myself, things that, and some of them aren't true or can be re-examined, right? So, um, I've found uh, that a lot of my childhood and a lot of what resulted from it were extensions of these stories that I had learned, specifically one of deficit and something being wrong or something being fundamentally flawed with me. The idea of bipolar, the idea of depression, the whole concept of mental health in many ways implies a fundamental brokenness. And when we talk about stigma, I think that's what we're really talking about. And what I've found is actually somebody who's really gooey and gushy and loves love and loves emotion and is very soft and gentle and has a innate need to be seen and validated by virtue of sort of this false story that there wasn't value there or that something was broken. And settling into that specifically as a man in this culture these days has been confronting and challenging because bell hooks often talks about this, that we value maleness predominantly in our culture from a performative perspective, how men show up and what they provide, right? And it's very hard, and it has been very challenging for me to accept myself in my as in my maleness simply because I am a human and I'm alive. And it's been confronting. It's been confronting to see how that anger has lived in me. The feeling that something that in order to be valuable, I have to perform in a certain way, and the rage that underwrites that has been very hard to confront. And so, but who I've found, I think, is just a um, a spiritual being having a human experience. Is that what they say?
Yeah.
Uh, I found somebody who feels oftentimes as though I'm on the outside looking in, feeling like I'm a little bit trapped in a meat suit that doesn't quite fit. I'm trying to, push
Yeah.
out and like get,
Yeah.
um, again, did that answer that?
Yeah. No, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Um, I'll maybe this maybe isn't a question, but it's just
Grabbing my coffee. Keep going. I can hear you.
perfect. Something that just like really arises in me and connecting it back to some of the conversations yesterday is and I've had this thought a few times when we've spoken, and this is on my mind all the time, but the Buddhist concept of brilliant sanity, which
Mm,
is that, each of us underneath all of the material layers that we pick up in life have a core clarity that is brilliantly sane.
mm,
And when we can connect with that, that is the source from which all of our thoughts and emotions and behaviors stem. And when we can connect with that, all of who we are kind of makes more sense. And so
mm-hmm.
I learned about Brilliant Sanity 2.5 years ago, and I started teaching at Naropa. As I learn about most things these days, my students were very interested in it, and I was like, I have no idea what this is. Let me, quick catch up. And my clinical support staff did their PhD on Brilliant Sanity, and so I asked them, will you kind of explain this to me? And they gave a definition, a description like that. And then they said, so for example, they knew I'm pretty open with my students about my own history and recovery in eating disorders. And, so they said, so for example, a brilliant sanity or a Buddhist perspective on an eating disorder might say, that is your brilliant sanity being brilliantly creative with the resources that you have access to get this soft, tender parts of you through these sharper environments.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll say for me, I mean, this was 2.5 years ago. I've, been involved in, active recovery processes, 12-step groups for 15, 20 years now, and well, not 2015. Um, and it washed away layers of shame
Taking
I didn't
notes.
even, yeah, it washed away layers of shame that I didn't even know that I had. You know, like feel pretty comfortable in my own experiences. And I think that message is so important for so many different reasons. And one is I find as a health coach, and I've gone through this experience myself, and I'm not at the top of the mountain on it by any means, but I think so often it can be easy to think I'm broken. What's wrong with
Mm-hmm.
me? And most of the clients who I see, that's like the only thing they believe when
Mm-hmm.
they come start working with me is I'm broken. I can't trust my own brain. I can't trust my own body. And I think a lot of the healing is when we can get back to that core of I can trust myself. I am resilient. And that's not really a question, but it sounds like that's bringing up something for you.
Yeah, no, there's so many things that that brings up. So brilliant sanity is this beautiful concept that essentially is a poetic way of referencing that place. And I'm quoting Elena Brower here. I do one of this. I wouldn't even call it a meditation, but um, it she says there's a place inside of you that is always at peace, always at rest. And I believe that's what brilliant sanity refers to. And that place is it is always accessible if we are willing to quiet our minds enough to get there. But even in the moments where our minds are not quiet, I've found that it's there. It's right there. It's that core piece of you that is literally unflappable. It is that
Yeah,
it can't be
yeah,
broken. It doesn't,
yeah,
there is no fracture, right? Um, and the way I view diagnoses is, for a long time, because they do come, when you think of like the word addict, that comes with a tremendous burden. It comes with a tremendous story, even the story of recovery. And I'm not saying those things aren't helpful, they are, but they come with a tremendous burden. And the way I view diagnoses now is very much like, look, all these are words that create a container for a set of behaviors. That's it, right? And those behaviors, are categorized in specific ways. And all it does is it gives us a languaging around, oh, this identifies this way, right?
yeah,
But there's nothing, when we peel that back, there's nobody saying anything's wrong, right? Some of those behaviors can be what we would call maladaptive. But to your point, it's also our brilliant sanity doing its best to adapt to the world, or the stimulus that the world is applying to us, right?
yeah,
Um, and so there is an inherent trust that can be extended there, but also there's the governing, that silence, that brilliance in you also can override that in a way and say, look, we don't, I know I want to do that, whatever it is. I know I want to reach for the candy right now, whatever your candy happens to be,
yeah,
whether it's sex, drugs, rock and roll, you know, but I don't have to, right? Because there's a place underneath that that's just dead calm. Um, but I believe also that all of these things are, and this is more theoretical and philosophical, but this is the way I've come to understand myself. All of these things are extensions of love. I really don't believe. Now you could push back on me scientifically here and talk about hormones and all the stuff. I believe that everything that we are experiencing is an extension of one singular thing, which I would call I'm just going to use the word love. Some people can call it source energy. You can call it whatever you want. I don't want to be woo-woo here. I believe there's a base creative energy that exists in all of us, and humankind is uniquely designed to create. Look around us at any moment. We have created this as an extension of our biological station in the world. What happens is that love or that creative energy uh, is gets pushed through us, and we are a prism. And so you view it like, the cover of the Pink Floyd album, right? There's this brilliant white light that comes through our human bodies and the experiences, and then it gets pushed out in different ways. And those are the different emotions that we feel, and those are the different behaviors that we express, and those are the different forms of art that come out of us, right? So when I zoom out far enough, what I'm seeing is this is my love wanting to be seen, needing to be expressed. Any emotion I feel is my love, my base core emotion being pressed upon or stimulated in a specific way. And it's expressing as anger. Oh, my love feels overlooked. My love feels oppressed. My love feels celebrated. My love feels denigrated. My love feel, and then those come out as the I'm frustrated, I'm angry, I'm sad. Do you see what I mean by that? And
Yeah.
so that brilliant sanity is in many ways that pure white light that's getting thrust through the prism of my uncomfortable meat suit
Beautiful.
and the world that it operates in. I don't know if that was too esoteric for people, but like, fuck it.
Well, I think that's beautiful. I was actually just having a conversation with someone a couple days ago who's been, has a behavior that they're struggling with and they continue to struggle with. And they just kind of express, like, I just, I keep falling down, falling down. And a story that's been like coming up a lot for me right now. Well, I gave two. One, there's kind of an adage, and I'm going to tell it in like a Christian framing, but it could be in any framing of, this person who, they try to do right by God and they fail 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 and they keep trying and they keep failing, they keep trying and they failing and they die and they go up to, heaven and God basically just says, my child, I love you so much, come right on in. And the person says, like, but I, failed you at every turn. And, God says, like, but you kept trying, and
Mhm.
to me, it's that, like, the love was there. And, I don't want to like Bogart. I will share. I don't want to Bogart the whole conversation, but the analogy that keeps coming up for me, I cross country skied in high school. I went on to ski in the Junior Olympics by my kind of last 2 years. And in 10th grade, I was the first year that I tried out for the Junior Olympics and trained really well that summer. My coach was like, I think you're going to get on the podium. And based on how I was training, he was absolutely right. And I did not get on the podium that year. I did not make the Junior Olympic team that year. And I got like last to the last five of every qualifying race, just miserable. And my first qualifying race that I did, I was so nervous. It was in Michigan. I was had done this rock solid training. I was kind of thinking like maybe I want to be in the Olympics and then I have to be in public, all these things. And I was like burned out before we started the race because thought all this in my head. The race was miserable. It was just a slog. I'm burned out. I'm exhausted. I'm like actively watching my dreams, slip between my fingers. And I get to this hill at the end and I'm miserable. The only thing that could have made it worse was that my dad was on this hill just cheering and so excited to see me. And I was like, go away. Now I can't quit. Now I have to like keep trying and pretend to be happy. And then the only thing that could have made that worse was then there's a downhill, and I flew off into the woods, which happened many, many times after that in cross country skis, So I'm miserable. I'm now got it's freezing, there's snow everywhere, trying to get my skis, get back on. And like, I am not kidding. My dad could have not been more joyful. Like, we had a flip book of photos of me going off into the woods and getting back up. And as I've like reflected on this later, it was like every race. It was like my dad's favorite thing. He'd go to the hill to like be there to watch me fall. And so fast forward, I'm 27, at my 1 year anniversary in recovery from an eating disorder. My dad, 1 year, 1 year, my dad gave me a card And it was like right aligned with Father's Day and my birthday. So it said, Happy Father's Day to me, father of thee. It rhymed. It's my dad's quirk. And then he said, Brenna, I'm just as proud of you now as I was when you won the Athena Award in high school for athletics and sports, as I was when I watched you fall about 200 meters from the finish line at the state meet, which did happen, and get up with a mouthful of snow and sprinted into the finish line. And then he said, the power
Mm,
of recovery. And this is about the most self-regulated I've ever told this story. What I truly believe as I reflect on that in retrospect is it really was my dad's favorite thing, I think, to watch me fall in the races. But he wasn't watching me fall. He was watching me get back up. I think
mm,
that's what my dad loved. And he didn't make me get back up. He never made me get back up. When I was younger, I would try to quit races. And there was one conversation where he was like, well, I don't know what to tell you. You have to get back to the finish somehow, but he was just there. And I'm so grateful for that because he enabled me the opportunity to learn for myself that I'm a person who gets back up.
mhm,
And for me, I reflect on that a lot, more recently. Um, it enables me to have trust in myself, right?
mhm,
And there's so many messages that I have pulled from that and that you can, it's not about how you finish the race because you don't really have control over that. I never did. It's about how you go through it, and it's not about you can't control if you fall. It's about do you choose to get back up? Maybe you stay laying in the snow for a long time, but eventually do you choose to get back up? And I think that's relevant to what you shared on the love,
mhm.
the self-love. And there is kind of a question in that. I'm not just trying to like share my own story, but a little bit I am. Um,
Share. It's
you
great.
know, when I hear you frame your childhood and your experience of being caught in an avalanche in Gasherbom, I think there's a lot of experiences in there where maybe you didn't have efficacy. And I
Mhm,
I don't want to impose, but I'm just kind of offering. And I think that's something that a lot of people on some level, I think when you're a kid can relate to, like there's certain elements of your life where you don't have control. Um, and I wonder, I guess, how do you find that, how does that resonate for you that like my perception of you would be you're not the person who falls. You're the resilience that lives through this and not just lives through it, but uses it as a platform for advocacy,
mm.
and voice and shining light to these experiences.
Well, I think it's that's a really beautiful story about your dad and what a beautiful reframe. And I appreciate you sharing it because it gives me a lot to think about. One of the things that and this is more recently as as I speak to corporations and teams and things like that, one of the things that I often talk about is resilience, this idea of resilience and getting back up. Um, but and I'm going to circle this around, I promise, back to trust. Um, One of the things that I've come into contact with is that resilience is less about holding on and more about letting go. And
Mhm.
what I mean by that is I've identified these as I've looked back on my life, I've really looked at said, well, how much was resilience and how much was survival? Because they're different things, right?
Yeah.
Survival is reactionary, and survival is not underwritten by values. It's not. We do things that are devoid of value when we're in immediate survival mode. So resilience is a response and it is underwritten by values. And to me, I identify that in four clear components. There's agency or efficacy would be another sort of corollary to that. There's agency, endurance, curiosity, and trust. And
Mm,
what I mean by letting go is when you're in survival, you are you are not taking agency. It's usually backwards looking and blame filled, right? You're like, this is what happened to me. Those are these events, these outside things that happened to me. So for example, when we had the fires here in LA this spring, there were two kinds of people that I observed, and I had 9 people who lost their homes that night. Um, in my close community, there were the people that were like the fire hydrants weren't full, the reservoirs were empty, there weren't enough fire trucks, and why is this and there's all this blame, and that's understandable. They're in survival mode. And then there were the people that were like, well, I don't have a house, I need to figure this out right now. And that is agency over the situation. All of the sort of context matters. It does. I'm not saying it doesn't, but it comes, I think, later. So agency, it's all about taking agency. So there, you're letting go of blame. You're letting go of the story that's attached to the event. And all it is this thing happened. The next thing is, I always say, certainty kills curiosity, or certainty kills creativity. As
Mm.
soon as we're certain about anything, and that's very, very normal when we're in a survival sort of scenario, we get very certain about things because it gives us some level of comfort of the situation we're in. But as soon as we're certain about something, we have stopped growth. Now we're in one track, right? So certainty kills curiosity. So it's about letting go of your certainty. And that moves you into a state of discomfort, right? But discovery demands discomfort. And this is where you have to grow your endurance. That third key component. We have to be able to grow our endurance in our discomfort and our uncertainty and our curiosity. And lastly, trust transcends force. So you're letting go of blame, you're letting go of certainty, you're letting go of comfort, and you're letting go of force, because trust transcends force, and you're leaning into trust. And when you combine those things, you move out of your sympathetic or your parasympathetic sympathetic nervous system. You move out of fight or flight. You're not reacting. You're engaging with all of them. Okay, I can withstand this. I can be curious. There's no point in blaming, and I'm going to trust the outcome. When you do that, it slows it all down. You're back in your parasympathetic. You are engaging with your prefrontal cortex, right? You're back in logical and rational thought. And that is underwritten by values. And so if you can clearly identify your values, and to the point of getting up at the end of the race, right? Your values are in finishing, right? Your values are not in giving up. And all of this happens like this, but it shows you where your values are. And that is the recipe of resilience. So when I look back on my life, I'm looking at things going, where was I in survival? And where was I in resilience? And a lot of times they're kind of murky. They're a little bit there. It's hard to really clearly define which was which, right? Um, but I like to frame the journey towards the most net positive outcome as one in which resilience was the modality versus survival. Um, does that make
Yeah,
sense? That was a long,
it's beautiful. Yeah,
yeah.
it's
And
beautiful.
anybody who has questions too, I love questions about this stuff. Because by the way, I'm still working all this shit out in my own mind. I'm still coming to these things daily where I think about them. And the other thing I want to say here is that when things happen to us, and specifically as the conversation around mental health has exploded, I think one of the things that I'm seeing that's a little bit troubling is we're viewing psychology and the sort of global understanding of mental health as an invitation into victimhood.
Yeah.
Like, this happened to me, and that's why I'm this way. My view is it's almost the opposite. I believe the understanding of psychology and the mind and mental health is an invitation out of victimhood. It gives us a way to understand. But so if we live there, if we live in the mindset of this happened to me, we stay stuck. Even framing ourselves as survivors, which I think is a necessary part on the journey, keeps our narrative fundamentally tethered to the traumatic event. And I think that becomes problematic over a long enough timeline.
Yeah.
I
So
just
there's what,
word
thank
vomited.
you. That's beautiful. Oh, here, we've got a question. Katie Bray, I love the contrast of survival and resilience. My sister is the best in the world, and I love her so much. Oh, thank you, Katie. Just kidding.
No.
LOL. Do you have any specific concrete examples from your life or journey of when you were in one state versus the other? That's a great question.
Ooh, it's a really, really good question. Oh God. And to be honest here, this is a very hard thing because what I'm talking about is theoretical. And then when you try to apply it into a certain scenario, it becomes more challenging, undoubtedly, because I do think they overlap. So I'll use uh, I'll use an example. Okay, when I left, I don't know how this I don't know where this is going to go. It's just the first thing that's coming to my head. I left National Geographic on the heels of a very, very profoundly troubling set of circumstances for me. Um, and it's in the book. I go into it in great depth, but I'm gonna summarize. It's a small group. I'm gonna summarize it. I don't talk about this a lot publicly, but I feel like what's in the fucking book, so anybody can know about it. But I think it's valuable. I was It was 2019, and we were on the tail of what was sort of the height of the Me Too moment, right? And I got a call from National Geographic from the legal department at Disney that said, we've received an anonymous accusation of uh, misconduct, and I asked for the specifics, and they're complicated, right? And I'll give some context here. Um, I told an inappropriate joke at a work sponsored function at a party, and I asked, "Okay, can you give me some specifics?" They told me the punchline, and I was like, "Man, sounds like me. I fucked that up." Um, but apparently a joke had made somebody feel uncomfortable. Okay, fair. And then uh, the other incidents was that I had walked into a party, and I don't remember this at all. That's part of the problem. Uh, Meaning it's that I could forget is part of the problem. But apparently I walked into a party, I walked up behind a group of friends, and I slapped somebody on the butt. Right. This was a colleague. It was the way I assumed this happened was I walked in and it was a party and it was gregarious and I goosed somebody. Um, the person that made the accusation was not that person. Uh, but she corroborated it, and I trust her, and I believe her. And I said, well, if she says it happened, then it happened. So the reason I bring this is up is because now immediately I was in profound survival mode because I'm like, wait, what the fuck? And I am reacting like, but it was a joke and it was all this, and now I'm immediately looking to blame and not because I'm in fear. I'm losing my job. I'm being accused of something that doesn't feel in alignment with my person or my humanity at all. And yet I'm confronted with a very real situation that I've already admitted that, well, if they said it happened, then it happened. Um, and so my first reaction was blame, look for certainty in my vindication. This is humor, this is bullshit, this is an overreaction, right? An absolute inability to sit in the discomfort of what is my part in this and how did I play into this and how does this land squarely at my feet, right? So I'm not taking agency, I'm not allowing, and there's no curiosity about it, right? And I'm forcing myself through this situation going, in my own sort of righteousness. It took time, and that did not end well. That did not go well. To tie up what happened, all of this was sort of sorted out. In fact, the National Geographic went to bat for me and said, "Look, this punishment doesn't fit the crime. This seems very complicated." Um, and all of it was clear, and I was invited back to work for them, which I didn't. But more specifically to the point, what took time was for me to step into that resilience mode and go, okay, these things happen, and it's complicated. It's complex, um, and I don't know what I need to know about this. So that was the shift into now I'm going to learn everything I can about this, not just the Me Too movement, but patriarchy writ large and how these things come about, what we're taught as young men and boys, what we're taught as young women and girls. Um, and I'm going to get really uncomfortable with my own knowledge around it. And then I'm going to sit in that discomfort for a long time. And I'm going to have to take on the fact that like these things did impact people in ways that even if I didn't certainly didn't intend, they had a net negative outcome. And in doing so, I'm going to trust that this journey through this is going to lead me towards a broader understanding and a more compassionate understanding of how I can show up for men and women differently, how I can show up for myself differently. And ultimately, that resulted in, I think, one of the most powerful chapters in the book is me stepping into a more complete and total understanding of my role in this, where we all fail, the collective sort of misunderstanding of each other, and where we can all do better. Uh, and and so that's one example. But see, it took a shift. It didn't come immediately naturally. Um, and I certainly was in survival mode at the beginning. So I hope that answered the question well.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Thank you. Heather's got a hand up.
Yeah.
Katie says that was a great example. I really appreciate you sharing it. It takes a lot of humility and is very relatable.
Thanks,
Uh,
Katie.
Yeah.
Your
Heather, go
book
ahead.
is amazing. I
Oh,
put in
thank
the
you,
chat, I
Heather.
devoured it. I think I really read it in a day. Like it
Wow.
was
Thank
incredible.
you.
Um, what you're talking about right now makes me think of a situation I was in. We seem to rush and have a need for conclusion.
Mhm.
Yes.
So
Mm,
we want conclusion, and within conclusion, either it's justified or vilified.
right. Mm, beautiful
Um,
point.
and that's just what resonates with me as you talk about this example. Uh, I'm going to talk about it a little bit later. I wrote a book. In the book, one of I've used my best parenting move. My best
Yeah.
parenting move is this. Huh.
Yeah. That is a great parenting move. It's so true. I was talking with a friend the other day whose sister is bipolar, and he actually worked with Kanye deeply in some of his most manic episodes. And similar to your best parenting move, his best guidance parenting move in those moments was just say, okay. Like when somebody, when Kanye or his sister or somebody is spinning off and telling like a huge manic, like whatever it is, rather than trying to say why it doesn't work or why or supporting the thrust forward, is he just be like,
Yeah.
huh, okay.
Yeah.
You know,
Not,
and
not yes, not no, not good, not bad, not right, not wrong.
yes. Yeah. And I
Huh.
think you make a really good point. That conclusion is the certainty, right? We lust for the certainty or the vindication. And we as a culture, specifically in our most recent years, by virtue of the soundbite culture that we live in, we look for these declarative statements that make us feel vindicated or justified in our own experience. And they might not be based in any sort of scientific reality. But you see it all the time in the conversation about relational work these days. Everybody has an idea of how it's exactly supposed to work, but they're so prescriptive that they leave no room for nuance. And that nuance is what pushes back against conclusion, right? It's like, huh, wow, there's a lot going on here. And being able to live in the ambiguity and the messiness of that messy middle, I think, is where Brenna, you said something earlier when you were telling your story. You said this is the most self-regulated I've ever been telling this story. Really, when we're talking about mental health and the journey through it, for me, what I've discovered is that really what I'm talking about is self-regulation. It's not as complicated as we make it. Is can I withstand the discomfort of potentially being wrong or being in a complicated, messy scenario and allow observe my nervous system getting lit up over that, but not react to it,
Yeah.
right? I can respond to it. So again, it's all Heather, that was such a beautiful point. Thanks for raising that. That was so beautifully said.
Nico had a comment in the chat and then he said, oh, he kind of answered it, but I'm still going to read it. And then I just see Akira put one in too, but I'll go with Nico's first. So Nico said, I love that four-part approach, which I also wrote down: agency, endurance, curiosity, and trust. Um, Especially the certainty versus curiosity piece. Can
Hmm.
you share more about how one can apply this in a challenging situation? So any protocols or tips? And I had the same question. I would add, like, are there any things that you do in moments that you find helpful?
Well, I mean, it's really about looking at the language, and you could put this in NLP or CBT, kind of cognitive distortion speak, or you could just simply put it as like, what are my declarative statements right now? In my internal chatter, where am I making declarative statements? And those for me are the breadcrumbs to where I'm certain about something, right? So I really try to examine. I am. This was anything that ends with a solid period is to me an indication that there's some certainty. Now that's not to say that some of those things might not be true. I'm just
Yeah.
saying that's my point of entry into the inquisition, into the curiosity around, oh, well, okay, I'm very certain there, but is there another angle that I could be looking at that from? And playing with all of those angles. Does that make sense? And allowing the space to be like, well, I don't like that. That doesn't make me feel good necessarily, but that could also be that that could be another perspective that I could take.
Yeah.
Um, so I think my awareness is more around the language that I'm using because the
Yeah.
language is in many ways driving the emotional reaction and response. So I don't know if that's helpful.
Yeah.
And I just saw Akira. Is that how I say that name?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a really great comment. She said, agreed, Heather. And on victimhood, I found it's a challenge. Appropriate validation is often necessary to move out of survival. 100% agree with you there. That I think this is a spectrum. We move along because for a time it's necessary for people to know that they were the victim of something.
Mhm.
Unquestionably, that is absolutely a part on the journey. So I love that you made that point. However, it's both mentally easier and culturally rewarded to have certainty. Even social media, as a small example, it's deep in division, quickly rewards us with vindication and certainty in ways that seems organic. So I'm agreeing with you 100%. You see this in the proliferation of the discussion around things like narcissism, right? Where people go through painful experiences, deeply painful experiences where somebody did do things that were they were a victim of that, whether it's betrayal, whether it's all of, name it. But rather than, and so first of all, acknowledging this did happen and that was a betrayal, that was a boundary violation, and that has a absolutely warranted neurobiological, physical, and emotional effect on me, and I'm going to give that space. The problem that I see is then we get stuck in these narratives of so that's why everybody's ex is now a narcissist, if that makes any sense, which
Mhm.
ironically, and I point this out, some people don't like this because what we're looking for again is a delineation that gives us comfort around our experience. We're looking for the comfort and we're looking for the certainty. But ironically, in that discussion, it's so funny because people are like, they're a narcissist, which immediately allows people to escape any of their own agency in the situation or
Yeah.
accountability, which is ironically kind of fucking narcissistic,
Yeah.
if that makes any sense. But again, that's just an example.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I
um,
had like a question all teed up and now I'm totally blanking on it. But so maybe I'll go with this instead, just for now.
sorry, I have COVID, everybody. That's why.
Oh yeah, yeah. By the way, it's talking about resilience. Corey also texted me last night and said, not a big deal, but I have COVID.
I mean, it's just a
So
head cold
grateful.
now.
So
So,
grateful for you to be here. Um, Well, okay, here I'm kind of stringing this together as I go, but you mentioned when I asked like in finding yourself, what do you find? And you said, I find a collection of stories.
Mhm.
There's a, I attribute it to Buddhism. It could be other people, but there's a technique that I find to be very helpful. I use it with clients, and then when I use it with clients, I am reminded to use it with myself. That when we're in our own experience and we're like experiencing our experience through our body, right? And it's like, this is happening to me, I'm doing this. Um, I think that can have a stronger proclivity to get feeling like we're trapped in our experience, feeling like we maybe have
Mhm.
less agency, feeling like we have to react immediately, feeling like, to pull in like 12-step literature, kind of the bondage of self.
Mhm.
And if we can observe ourselves in that, we're suddenly detached from it.
Mhm.
Because if you're observing it, then you're the observer.
Mhm.
What perspective are you observing it from? Obviously not from the eyes of you, but above. And I think that can maybe help offer, for me, I'll just say that can help offer some space of
Mhm.
like pause, perception. And then, so I'm just going to offer that over here. I know that storytelling is a theme for you
Mhm.
and one that you work with a lot and you kind of share with a lot. Over here, I'll offer a Hawaiian shaman perspective and other indigenous perspectives as well of life, that life is all really a dream. And
Mhm.
if we can learn how to harness harmony with that energy, we can live our life as a lucid dream. Essentially, we can be the painters of our lives. And there was a way that I was going to offer that as a question, but my brain's kind of kind of been doing this for a while. So I'll just offer like, I wonder, does that resonate and does that bring up anything for you? Do you have experiences where you have felt shifting into those different areas, maybe?
I mean, always. I think even with I was watching I love, by the way, people think I'm always out like writing books or climbing mountains. You would be alarmed at the amount of time I binge watch television.
Oh, I've hung out with
Yeah.
you.
So, uh, but I was watching a show recently called American Primeval, and there's a scene where this, young boy has got his leg has been horribly broken, and they're trying to reset the bone, and he's screaming like blood curdling screams. The acting is amazing. And the guy who's working on him like he puts his hand on him and he says, "Hey, it's just pain." And that is what you're talking about when you're talking about the observer. And that's a very stark example of being able to stand back, because pain is, especially physical pain, is so overwhelming that we identify with the experience and we become fused to the pain, when in fact there is the opportunity. And this is sort of, again, this goes back to even CBT kind of concepts of where you step back and you view the story and you can go, oh, it's just pain. And in that moment, you're actually you're decoupling from it. You're no longer part of it. Now, it's very, very challenging to continually live that way through your day-to-day life. Our brains are not designed to do that. What I'm not suggesting that we bypass things. That's a very different thing. But I do resonate very much with the idea of observing things, which again leads back to curiosity. Oh, it's just pain. Well, this really hurts. My God, like this is hard.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and I think we can do that with all things, but it takes presence. It takes a mindset. It's like going to the gym. You want to have a great butt. Well, you got to go do hip thrusters, and that happens throughout every day and every emotional experience that we have. You have to do the reps, right? And I've noticed for myself that it comes in waves. Sometimes I'm very engaged in that process, and other times I lose it altogether. Um, so I don't know if I fully answered that. I
Yeah.
see Lori also had a question.
Yeah.
She
Yeah.
um, I use my camera as a way to witness versus being present. How do I balance that now? I think that actually ties directly into what we were just talking about. I think the camera for me was often a way to actually distance myself from potentially the horror or the tragedy that I was witnessing, but also the beauty. When you think of it, there's a very literal divider between me and the world, right? So I'm actually not present for the moment at all. I'm separating from it and observing it. And and that comes with both positive and negative impacts in that regard. And how do I balance that now? I try to use it as a lesson more than anything else. What is the metaphorical camera that I can use in any given moment to give myself a little bit of distance to see, okay, this is the state of play. This is not necessarily my the totality of my reality. That rhymed. Um, so
Next
I don't know if
move
that
is on the music.
yeah, yeah. I don't know if that answered your question, Lori, but um I guess I try to participate completely in my reality now. To your words, Brenna, you know, living life as a lucid dream, I think is a really beautiful way to sort of play with that idea. Um, I mean, and that's sort of one of the things. I know you've got a lot of psychedelic talks coming up today, but that's one of the things that psychedelics, for me as a healing modality, have really helped with is experiencing life in these ways that is more like a little bit more detached from the identification with a hard reality, but rather that I am moving through an experience that is far more malleable than I have once allowed myself to believe.
Mm, beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah.
I see we're at an hour and I see we've got Erica on, Dr. Zelfand on,
Mm.
and I obviously could spend all day chatting with you. Maybe we'll land the plane there and I'll just offer, are there any parting words that you would like to offer? I mean, we've touched on so much resilience, endurance. Yeah, I guess just in all of that, any parting words that you'd like to offer for anyone listening or anyone who might watch this recording?
Well, just, I mean, mostly thank you. I think these conversations are so beautiful to have. And then every time you know, every time I have these conversations, I feel my own mind being stretched. So it's a gift to me. I like to, you know, I think it helps all of us explore these things and articulate more clearly, yeah, what this experience, this lucid dream is. And, you know, they're not my words, but there's a reason I opened my book with a quote,
I was gonna ask.
well, two quotes, but the first one is Rilke, and he says, let all things happen to you, beauty and terror. Just keep going. No feeling is final. And emotions have this profound way of feeling like they are the totality of things. And yet the evidence of our lives suggests something entirely different, that they are momentary. And to the point you just made, when we can step into the observation of them and divorce ourselves a little bit from the profound stories that come with the words we use to talk about our brokenness, even that word, I think we're invited into a space that is much more generative and ultimately much more healing, if we even want to use that word. So, and I hope that this conversation in some ways can be that for other people as much as it is for myself. So thank you.
Thank you so much. So grateful to
Yeah.
have you here, Corey, and just
Yeah.
yeah, I love the way that you live your life. It's an it's beautiful to be a part of. I'm really grateful.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
See you guys. Take care. Send me a
Take care.
message. All right.
Excellent. Oh yeah, will you leave maybe if folks want to get a hold of you, how they can maybe find you on social media or get a
Sure.
hold of you if they want? Cool. Thanks.
It'll just be in the group chat there. and that's just Instagram. And then yeah, I'll just give you guys my email as well. Don't send it to everybody, but if you want to
And
email
then
me
maybe
for
your
anything.
cell phone number and your social
Yeah,
security
yeah, exactly.
number,
My
right?
social, my
Please.
address. You can dox me
Yeah,
if you hated everything that I
yeah,
said.
yeah.
So,
Excellent.
all right.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
See you guys. Bye.
Thank you.